welcome to Attic Raiders Retro Reviews, where today we're going to be dusting off the old grey matter and trying to beat the Blockade. Blockade was released in 1979 by Lakeside Games in the US and by Action GT here in the UK. Blockade was based on an earlier game called Cul-de-sac, which was brought out by Lazy Days in 1975. But it was refreshed, rebranded, renamed and re-released later on as part of Lakeside's abstract strategy games, which they brought out in late 78 and 79. There were 5 of these Lakeside abstract strategy games which were released in the series, and this is my review of the final one. So if you want to check out the other ones which I've reviewed, take a look at this link above. Like the rest of Lakeside strategy games, this is very abstract, it's very utilitarian, very plain, straight lines, smooth surfaces. There's nothing in the way of artwork or sculpt on this. It's designed to be played, not to be marvelled over. And the box really does reflect that. You've got the name Blockade and essentially a photograph of the game being played, and that's it. There's no other box artwork of any kind. It's just a picture of the game, and the back is very much the same. It's black and white, the same as the rest of the games in the series. It's got a couple of photographs of the game being played and some simple rules on there. The rest of the rules are on the inside cover and go into much more depth on how to play the game. Like the rest of Lakeside's abstract strategy games, this is just a 2-player game and is for the older market for ages 8 to adult. It's not going to take you very long to play. This is maybe about a 15-20 minute game, but it is going to get you thinking. There's a lot of strategy and tactics involved in this one. Well, there's clearly not a lot to look at on the outside, so let's take a look inside and see what's there. The game comes with 4 playing pieces or pawns, 2 yellow, 2 red, and these are just Lakeside's what I call pen lid style playing pieces, and these come in some of Lakeside's other games like Isolation, and I don't really like these, to be perfectly honest with you. They're very tall with small bases, so they do kind of topple over quite easily when you're playing a game. We've also got 40 wall sections, 20 blue and 20 green. You don't actually need all of them, you only need 18 green and 18 blue for the game. 2 blue and 2 green are going to be spares in case you lose any. And we've got the game board, which is a nice big thick chunky piece of plastic. Like most of Lakeside's game board pieces, it's really thick quality plastic. It's not going to split or crack easily, which is nice. The only thing I don't particularly like about this is that the yellow and the red starting spots are just paper decals that have been stuck on, so over time those may dry up the glue there and fall off. I would have preferred this if those had been painted on instead. To start the game, players decide what colour they are going to be and they place their pawns onto the coloured starting spots on the game board. Each player is then given 9 blue wall pieces and 9 green wall pieces. The blue wall pieces can only be placed horizontally across the board, whereas the green wall pieces can only be placed vertically up and down the board. The object of the game then is simply to get one of your 2 playing pieces onto one of the home spots which belongs to your opponent. To do that, on each of your turns you're going to move one of your playing pieces and put down a wall. Playing pieces can either move 2 spaces forward, backwards, right or left, or they can move 1 space diagonally in either of those 4 directions. Once you've made your move, you're then going to place down a wall, remembering that the blue ones can only be placed horizontally across the board and the green ones can only be placed vertically across the board. Now when you're putting down a wall, you have to make sure that it goes between the lines. This would not be allowed, blocking off 3 paths across there. You can only use a wall to block off 2 paths. It then becomes the other player's go, and they are going to do the exact same kind of thing, remembering obviously that no player can move through a wall that is going to block your path. And gameplay is just going to continue like this, with players moving their pieces and putting down wall pieces. If at any time you find yourself blocked by another player, you can just jump over them 1 space. Now, the important thing to bear in mind when you're playing this game and building your walls is that at all times must all playing pieces have at least one path clear to all home spaces. So that means that you can't at any point build a wall all the way around your home space so that the other player cannot get there. You want to make your paths as convoluted as possible to try to stop your opponent. So I know that this red person is trying to get to here, so instead of making it nice and easy for them there, I can place my wall here to block them, but now they've still got a path round here which is freely available to them. Of course, the red player can also do something similar, whereby on their go, they can block off this path here to stop my yellow piece getting to this red home space here. However, they've not completely blocked off every avenue to one of these home spaces, because these yellow ones, which were going through here, are now going to have to rethink and go all the way round here to try to get there. So by placing walls, you're not ever going to completely stop your opponent from getting to your home space, but you are trying to play for time as long as you possibly can by making the route as long and circuitous as possible. Remember, on your go, as you're building, it's worth bearing in mind that you only have a limited number of each of the coloured wall pieces. So I might want to put a green wall piece here in order to slow down this red from getting round to this yellow home base. But if I run out of the green pieces, I can't do that. I've only got a blue piece left, which I cannot put here to stop them. They can only go this way. So that's not really a great deal of help to me. And I can't put it there because then that's going to block off these. So I don't know, I can only really kind of make their job a little bit more tricky, maybe by putting it there. So when you're building your walls and planning your layout as you go through the game, it's really worth keeping that in mind. If either player completely runs out of wall sections, then they just have to move without placing any down. And if both players are out of wall sections, then both players are just moving. And then it's pretty much a race to see who can get to the home spot first. And then it's a matter of how devious you've been able to make your path to see who's going to have to go the furthest. And as soon as one player gets just one of their playing pieces onto their opponent's home base, they have won the game. And in case you're thinking it, no, you cannot leave one of your playing pieces on your home base in order to guard it. If the other player is about to get onto the home base, they can take you off and then move on to it in order to win the game. Out of all of the abstract strategy games that Lakeside released in the late 70s, this and Isolation are my two favourites. Now for me, that's because you're having to manoeuvre some playing pieces through an ever-changing labyrinth. When I was a boy, I was brought up on stories of Greek myths and legends, of minotaurs and mazes, and that has always stuck with me. So I've got a love of board games which have surfaces which change and shift, particularly ones with moving walls. Waddington's Heroes of the Maze is an absolutely fantastic example of that, and I love the mechanical element in that. But the manual aspect of this works just as well. As an abstract game, this works perfectly, but I do like games which have themes to them. So if I were releasing this, I would be looking for some kind of dungeon crawler skin to it, so that the playing board has broken, crumbling tiles to it, and the blue and green tiled wall pieces are replaced by crumbling brick walls covered in moss, and those wobbly, unstable pen-lid playing pieces would perhaps be replaced by 3D miniatures of barbarians, dwarfs, wizards or elves. That way I think it would have appealed to a much larger child audience, and it would probably be popular today given the resurgence of Hero Quest with Avalon Hill re-releasing it. Like Hero Quest or Dungeons and Dragons, in this you're going to have the experience of moving your players through that maze, but you're also going to have the experience of being a dungeon master when you place down the walls and change the layout of the board for your opponent. You've got to think really carefully in this. There's a lot of tactics and strategy involved. Ideally, you're wanting to try to set up traps and lead your opponent into them. Obviously, you've got to be sneaky about it so that you're not signposting what you're doing, so that your opponent will fall into that trap before you spring it and block off that exit. But obviously, at the same time, they're trying to do the exact same thing to you. I love this kind of game where you're going head to head with an opponent and you have to try and outthink them. If you're looking to pick up this game, it can be found pretty easily, and because it's an abstract game, it goes quite cheaply. This is definitely the kind of thing that you will find in a thrift store or a charity shop, and even if you want to pick it up on eBay, they're pretty cheap. There's not many people after these, and so there's not a big demand for them. I would say though, it's definitely worth getting, and I would highly recommend this one. Well, that's it for this week. If you've enjoyed what you've seen, please remember to like, subscribe and drop a comment down below. It really does help the channel. We'll be back next time with another vintage board game, but until then, this is Attic Raiders Retro Reviews.